She said it without raising her voice, without anger, without fear. "My mom can buy you." The words landed in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom like a dropped glass, sharp, loud, and impossible to ignore. Ella Victoria Roth was 19 years old, standing before a judge, and she spoke as if the law were just another bill waiting to be paid. No hesitation, no second thought. Just confidence born from money distance and never having been told no. For a moment, the room went still. Judge Caprio didn't react right away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lecture. He simply set his pen down the way a man does when he knows something important has just crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. This wasn't about a traffic ticket anymore. This was about whether justice itself could be treated like a commodity. The case hadn't even been called yet. Outside that courtroom, it was a regular school morning. Children crossing a street, a crossing guard holding up a stop sign, parents trusting that the rules exist for a reason. And just minutes earlier, Ella Roth had driven nearly double the speed limit through that school zone, as if physics and consequences worked differently for her. In America, we like to believe that courtrooms are the last places money doesn't speak louder than character. But what happens when someone walks in, convinced that wealth outranks the bench? What happens when entitlement isn't whispered behind closed doors, but declared openly on the record? Before we go any further, take a moment. If you believe no one should be above the law, no matter their last name, their connections, or their bank balance, this story is for you. Subscribe to Mercy Stories because what happens next unfolds in just 31 minutes, and it reminds us why some judges refuse to let wealth override justice. The morning it happened looked like any other school morning. October air. Cool, clear. The kind of morning where parents hurry children, chatter, and routines run on trust. On Elmwood Avenue, near Carver Elementary School, a yellow beacon flashed steadily above the road school zone active. Speed limit 35 miles per hour. The rule wasn't symbolic. It existed for one reason: only children. At 8:47 a.m., Officer Teresa Ramirez was posted nearby, running speed enforcement as students crossed the street under the watch of a crossing guard. Roughly 20 children were moving from curb to curb. Backpacks, jackets zipped halfway, a stop sign raised in a gloved hand. Then a black sports sedan came through. LiDAR caught it instantly. 68 miles per hour, nearly double the posted limit. In an active school zone, during morning arrival. Physics doesn't negotiate. At that speed, stopping distance multiplies. Reaction time shortens. Margin disappears. Officer Ramirez activated her lights and siren immediately. The signal was clear. Slow down. Pull over. Now. The vehicle didn't stop. It continued for 2 full blocks before finally pulling to the curb. When Officer Ramirez approached the driver's side window, she found a young woman behind the wheel, later identified as Ella Victoria Roth, 19 years old, calm, unbothered, no visible urgency, no sign that she understood how close that moment had come to being irreversible. Officer Ramirez asked for license and registration. Ella didn't reach for either. Instead, she leaned back slightly and said, "Call my lawyer first." The officer explained evenly that traffic stops didn't work that way. Identification was required. That's when Ella escalated. Her tone sharpened. Her words shifted from dismissive to pointed. "Do you know who pays your salary?" It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The message was clear. Power was being invoked, not legal authority, but financial proximity. Officer Ramirez didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She documented. She followed procedure. Citations were issued: speeding in a school zone, reckless operation, failure to obey a lawful order. The body camera captured everything. What happened next didn't occur on the roadside, but it mattered just as much. At 9:02 a.m., 15 minutes after the stop, Ella sent a text message. One sentence. Casual. Confident. "Got cited. She'll make calls. Don't sweat it." Expectation wasn't hidden. It was assumed. 36 minutes after the traffic stop, the court received its first call. Then another. Then a voicemail. All from legal counsel associated with Roth Capital Group. The language was polished, professional, non-confrontational. A request for quiet resolution before the matter proceeded to hearing. No threats, no raised voices, just pressure applied early. This wasn't Ella's first encounter with traffic enforcement. Records showed 3 prior speeding citations in the past 18 months, all resolved through counsel, all handled without her personal appearance in court. Fines paid, files closed, lessons deferred, accountability outsourced. Back in the courtroom, Judge Frank Caprio reviewed the timeline carefully. The speed, the location, the presence of children, the delayed stop, the statements to a uniformed officer, the calls placed to the court, the text message that revealed expectation, not remorse. This wasn't about youth, or money, or even arrogance standing alone. It was about pattern. A pattern where consequences arrived and someone else made them disappear. A pattern where rules existed but only applied to other people. A pattern where safety depended on trust and trust had been treated as optional. And now, for the first time, that pattern had followed Ella Roth into a courtroom where payment was not a substitute for responsibility. The case had officially begun. By the time Ella Roth's name was called, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. This wasn't just another traffic case anymore. People could feel it. Reporters had leaned forward. Court staff sat straighter. Judge Frank Caprio looked down at the file in front of him, not with irritation, but with focus. The kind that comes when a judge understands that the behavior surrounding a case may matter more than the citation itself. Ella stood at the defense table with the ease of someone who had never needed to be nervous in a room like this. Her posture was loose, her expression unreadable. Beside her stood an attorney not chosen by her but sent by her mother, professional, polished, ready to resolve things quickly. The strategy revealed itself almost immediately. "Your Honor," the attorney began, "we're prepared to pay the fines today and put this matter behind us." Judge Caprio looked up slowly. "This court is not a payment portal," he said calmly. "Your client was clocked at nearly double the speed limit in an active school zone. We're not skipping the facts." He turned to the prosecution table. "Officer Ramirez, please take the stand." Officer Teresa Ramirez stepped forward, raised her right hand, and took the oath. Her voice was steady as she read the incident narrative into the record. Time, location, speed, the flashing school zone beacon, the presence of children, the delayed stop, the refusal to immediately comply. Then came the statement. "Do you know who pays your salary?" Judge Caprio asked for the body camera audio. When the words played back in Ella's own voice, sharp and dismissive, the room went quiet. Not shocked, just heavy. This was no longer hearsay. It was tone. It was intent. Caprio turned to Ella. "Did you make that statement to Officer Ramirez?" "Yeah," she said. "So what?" The answer landed harder than the audio ever could have. "So context matters," the judge replied evenly. "An officer was performing her lawful duty. You attempted to intimidate her by invoking financial power. Speed is physics, not privilege." He paused, then turned to the clerk. "Miss Lewis, were there any contacts made to this court regarding this case prior to today's hearing?" The clerk flipped through a log. "Yes, Your Honor. 2 phone calls and 1 voicemail. All from a number registered to Roth Capital Group Legal Counsel." The timeline was read aloud. The first call came 36 minutes after the traffic stop. Judge Caprio looked back at Ella. "Did you contact your mother after the stop?" "I texted her." The text appeared on the record, time-stamped, unambiguous. "Got cited. She'll make calls. Don't sweat it." The judge read it slowly. "Expectation of rescue," he said, "is not a defense." He asked for Ella's prior driving history. The clerk answered plainly. 3 speeding citations in 18 months. All resolved by counsel. No personal appearances, no direct accountability. Ella didn't deny it. "My lawyer handles it." "That's the problem," Judge Caprio replied. "Your lawyer pays your fines. That's not accountability." Then came the question that changed the tone completely. "Ms. Roth," he asked, "do you understand why school zones exist?" "I guess." "You guess." Officer Ramirez confirmed what the record already showed. Children were present. A crossing guard was posted. Students were actively crossing the street. Ella shrugged. "I stopped fine." "You stopped 2 blocks after the officer activated her lights," Caprio said. "That's not fine. That's defiance." He leaned forward slightly now, not angry, focused. "Ms. Roth, earlier today, before this case was even called, you told this court, 'My mom can buy you.' Do you stand by that statement?" There was a pause. Ella said she probably could. The courtroom went completely still. The attorney rose, panicked, now trying to interrupt. Counselor Caprio said, without looking at him, "Your client is 19 years old. She's an adult." He turned back to Ella. "Are you stating on the record that your mother could purchase this court?" Ella smirked. "My mom has dinner with the mayor every month. She funds half the charities in this city. If she wanted to make a call, this goes away." Judge Caprio asked the clerk to read the statement back verbatim, and when it echoed through the room, no one spoke. Not because they were confused, but because everyone understood exactly what had just been challenged. For several seconds, no one spoke. not because the courtroom was confused, but because the line had been crossed so clearly that silence was the only honest response. Judge Frank Caprio didn't react the way Ella expected. He didn't argue, he didn't defend himself, he didn't raise his voice. He let the words sit. My mom has dinner with the mayor every month. If she wanted to make a call, this goes away. These weren't careless comments. They were statements of belief, statements made openly on the record in a court of law. And Judge Caprio understood something important in that moment. This was no longer about traffic enforcement or even arrogance. This was about public trust. He straightened in his chair. "Ms. Roth," he said quietly, "you've just told this court that wealth and political proximity can erase a lawful citation. That belief, when spoken out loud, doesn't just insult me. It undermines the integrity of the judicial system itself." Ella didn't look away. "I understand my mom has more power than you do." That was the moment. Not dramatic, not loud, but irreversible. Judge Caprio glanced down at the file one last time. The evidence was already settled. LiDAR, body cam, witness presence, prior citations. The law on the traffic violations was clear. He delivered his findings without flourish. "I find the defendant guilty on all counts. Speeding in a school zone, reckless operation, failure to obey a lawful order." The penalties followed. Fines, a 90-day license suspension, mandatory enrollment in a driver safety course, consequences proportionate to risk. But everyone in the room knew that wasn't why the air felt heavy. Judge Caprio set his pen down again. "But we're not finished." He looked directly at Ella now. No anger, just clarity. "When you told Officer Ramirez, 'Do you know who pays your salary?' you attempted to intimidate a public servant. When you told this court, 'My mom can buy you,' you attacked the legitimacy of the judiciary." He paused. Direct contempt of court occurs when conduct in the immediate presence of the court obstructs justice or undermines its authority. Your statements were deliberate. They were repeated. And they were intended to suggest that justice is for sale. Ella shifted for the first time. Judge Caprio's voice lowered, not softer, but steadier. "What concerns me most is not that you insulted me. It's that you told every person in this room, officers, clerks, citizens, that outcomes depend on money. That rules are optional if your last name carries weight." He shook his head slightly. "That cannot stand. Not here." There was no gavel slam, no raised voice, just a sentence delivered with precision. "For direct contempt of court, I sentence you to 30 days at the adult correctional institutions." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't tension anymore, it was shock. Ella's expression collapsed in real time. Confidence drained first, then disbelief, then fear. "Wait," what she said. "You heard the ruling," Judge Caprio replied. "Officer Wilson, take Ms. Roth into custody." The attorney was on his feet, instantly, panic breaking through professionalism. "Your Honor, she didn't mean..." Counselor Caprio interrupted. "Your client said exactly what she meant. Twice. On the record." Officer Wilson stepped forward. Handcuffs came out. "You can't do this," Ella said, her voice rising now. "My mom will..." "Your mother will do nothing," Judge Caprio said without looking up. "This is direct contempt. It's immediate." The cuffs closed with a sound that echoed through the room. Not loud, just final. Ella's hands began to shake. She looked around, searching for help, for intervention, for someone to step in and stop what had never happened to her before. No one moved. As Officer Wilson guided her toward the side door, her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step marking the end of something she'd always believed was permanent. Power. Behind her, Judge Caprio spoke one final time. "For the record," he said, "the time is 10:31 a.m., 31 minutes from the call of the case to custody." The door closed. Next case. The sentence itself was brief, but the lesson behind it was heavy. Judge Frank Caprio waited until the courtroom settled, not completely, but enough for every word to land where it needed to. He didn't look at the audience. He didn't look at the cameras. He looked at Ella Roth, now standing with her hands cuffed behind her back, the reality finally pressing in. "Consequences," he said calmly, "teach what privilege hides." It wasn't a speech. It didn't need to be. The traffic violations had already been addressed. Fines imposed, license suspended. Those were routine outcomes for reckless behavior. What wasn't routine was what Ella had tried to do next, reshape the rules by sheer confidence in money and access. Judge Caprio spoke deliberately, making sure the record was clear. "This court exists so that citizens can believe the law applies evenly. When someone stands here and claims that wealth can erase accountability, that belief doesn't stay in this room. It spreads. And when it spreads, people stop trusting the system." He paused, letting the meaning settle. That is why contempt matters. Contempt wasn't about hurt feelings. It wasn't about ego. It was about protecting the idea that justice is real, stable, and not for sale. Without that protection, the courtroom becomes theater and the law becomes optional. Ella's attorney tried once more, voice strained now. Your Honor, she's 19. She doesn't fully understand. Judge Caprio raised his hand. She understands enough to say what she said, he replied. And she understands enough now to learn from it. He explained the sentence plainly. 30 days at the adult correctional institutions. Eligibility for review after 15 days contingent on reflection. Not promises, not letters from influential people, but demonstrated understanding. No favoritism, no shortcuts. As Officer Wilson prepared to escort Ella out, the transformation was already visible. The young woman who had walked into court, certain of her immunity, now looked small, unsteady, stripped of the invisible shield she had always relied on. She tried once more to reclaim it. This isn't over, she said, her voice breaking between defiance and fear. Judge Caprio didn't respond. He didn't need to. The power in that room had already shifted, not through volume, but through restraint. When the door closed behind her, the courtroom exhaled. Not in celebration, in recognition. Something had been corrected, something essential reaffirmed. Judge Caprio called the next case, but the moment lingered. People would talk about the sentence. They always did. Some would say it was harsh. Others would say it was overdue. But the truth sat somewhere quieter. A judge had drawn a line not against a person, but against an idea. The idea that money could lean hard enough to bend the law. The idea that arrogance was harmless. The idea that entitlement didn't need consequences. In that courtroom on that morning, those ideas lost. And justice, imperfect, human, and firm, held its ground. 15 days later, Ella Victoria Roth appeared again, this time on a screen. No courtroom entrance. No confident posture. No designer heels clicking against marble. She wore a standard-issue jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was bare. What stood out most wasn't how she looked, but how she held herself. Smaller, quieter, present. Judge Frank Caprio studied her carefully, the way he always did, not for performance, but for truth. Ms. Roth, he said you requested this review. What do you want to say? Ella didn't rush her answer. Your Honor, she began. I was wrong. I thought money meant power. I thought my mother's success meant I didn't have to follow rules meant for everyone else. I endangered children. I disrespected an officer. And I insulted this court. I'm ashamed. Caprio leaned forward slightly. Are those your words, he asked? Or did someone write them for you? They're mine, she said. I've had 15 days to think. He nodded once. Good. Shame, he replied, is often the beginning of change. Justice in Judge Caprio's courtroom had never been about humiliation. It was about correction. About restoring what had been damaged, not just in a case file, but in a person. He reduced her sentence to time served. But accountability didn't disappear. It transformed. Ella was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service with the Providence School Safety Program. Morning and afternoon shifts. In all weather. In the same school zone she had once treated like an inconvenience. She would assist crossing guards. She would stand where children crossed. She would slow traffic, not outrun it. She would also deliver in-person apologies to Officer Ramirez and to the principal of Carver Elementary. And she would record a public service announcement about school zone safety. No branding, no family references, just truth. Ella accepted every condition. 4 months later, she returned to court. Not to argue, not to negotiate, to report. She stood straighter this time, not defiant, grounded. I learned that rules aren't obstacles, she said. They're protections. I learned that my mother's money doesn't make me special. And I learned that respect comes from character, not net worth. She paused. When I told a judge, my mom can buy you, I thought I was showing power. I wasn't. I was showing how little I understood it. Real power is the officer who stayed calm when I tried to intimidate her. Real power is the crossing guard who stands in the cold every morning to keep kids safe. And real power is a judge who refused to let wealth override justice. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. You stopped borrowing power, he said, and started earning character. He closed the file. As Ella left the courthouse, she passed Officer Ramirez in the hallway. They exchanged a quiet nod. No words were needed. Later that afternoon, Judge Caprio returned to his bench book. On the page marked with Ella's name, he wrote a single line. The bench is not for sale. It never was. It never will be. He closed the book, turned off the light, and locked the door behind him. If this story made you think about power, accountability, or the kind of justice we want to pass on, share it. If you believe no one should be above the law, subscribe. And tell us in the comments, was 30 days too harsh, or exactly what she needed?